toll-free exchange is a next-generation peering platform for responsible organizations. This allows you to customize your rates and control your traffic flow. This will allow you to reduce costs for inbound because you can bypass the PSTN, access and transports elements to optimize call delivery. You can also generate revenue by terminating toll-free on your network. And Sean and Christy will get into that further in the presentation. It allows you to scale and grow without necessarily needing to augment additional facilities. Calls delivered over the exchange are 100% HD voice with video as well. And the exchange has a simplified billing and reconciliation process which tracks and reports on everything, providing analytics and settlement. So, I'd like to introduce Sean and Christy to tell you guys a little bit more about the exchange and what all those benefits look like in practice.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate that. I'm going to take this a little bit before we hand it over to Sean, who is the brains behind this, and we'll be able to explain it all to you. But I wanted to welcome everybody from the Toll-Free Exchange, to you guys. Thank you for joining us to our webinar part 2, take 2, however you want to put it. When we were doing the webinar last time, before we had our technical issues, I was actually still with ATL. My new title is actually, oh gosh, what is my new title? I am the Director of Partner Operations for the Toll-Free Exchange. When I was with ATL, I first heard about the Toll-Free Exchange, it's got to be at least a couple years ago. I was at a conference down in Las Vegas, and a couple of the guys from the Toll-Free Exchange ended up coming to a talk I was giving, and that's where I first learned about it. And I've followed it all along. You know, I've kept up with these guys every show. I've always met with them, always seen what's going on, what's new. Their biggest part was getting traction, you know, getting the traction on the backside. Well, that traction came when Sean took over the reins of the Toll-Free Exchange at the beginning of the year. And in 9 months, he's managed to grow it 5-fold. And I'm taking a look at it now. Like I said, I've been following this thing, and it's starting to explode. It's getting ready to explode. And the thing that really excites me about the Toll-Free Exchange is that it is literally something for everybody. It is, if you are a wholesaler, you're going to find great value in it. If you are an end user, enterprise client, and I know so many of the ATL clients do fall into that enterprise bucket, Sean's going to show you how, as an enterprise client, you can benefit from the Toll-Free Exchange as well. It's going to be quite a ride. It's going to be exciting. There is something here for everybody. I am so glad to see all of you here so that we can present it to you. Make sure that you ask your questions. John's posted in a little chat. You can ask your questions. We will get to those afterwards. If you want follow-up information or follow-up one-on-one meetings, please just reach out either to ATL, and they can facilitate, or you can come to Sean or I directly, and we can set those up for you. On the Toll-Free Exchange, you do have to be a REST-Borg, which means that it falls in lovely with ATL's model. In the time that I spent with ATL, I was very hands-on in developing their Atlas portal, and it's a wonderful system for managing your toll-free numbers. And so the marriage between ATL Communications, or RESTborg.com, I'm sorry, RESTborg.com, and the Toll-Free Exchange is such a natural fit, and that's why we're so excited to be able to present the Toll-Free Exchange to you with the backing of, or in conjunction with, RESTborg.com. So with that being said, I am going to hand this over to Sean Moore, and he is going to show you the magic that is the Toll-Free Exchange. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Christy. Appreciate that. Thank you, Will, John. been excited to get this webinar on the calendar again and back out, and I'm very happy to see some names that tried to join us before join us again. A lot of familiar names on here as well, and some new ones, which is always very exciting. You like to see all those come together. So with that, thank you for the introduction. Some of you are familiar with the exchange already, some not. So I'm going to take this at a common denominator of information that is going to be somewhat wide in the beginning, and then I'll start narrowing into a lot more feature-rich information as we move along. So what we've got today on the screen, you're seeing the basic toll-free exchange landing page. Again, we're tollfree.exchange. I always have to remind people you don't have to put the .com there, and that's kind of cool. But if you do, it'll work. In any case, you come into the main landing page, and you really, if you, assuming we get all the way to the end of this, you understand everything, you're to a point of wanting to adopt or come into the exchange, you simply come into this registration environment. It's a license agreement, just like accepting the latest version of iTunes. You just opt in and say, yep, no problem. When we went to the FCC with this originally, the FCC agreed that we are a software company and therefore would not be regulated if we had standard terms and conditions, which is basically our license agreement, and that we only charged a standard non-negotiable transit rate, meaning that whether you're AT&T or someone with an asterisk box in a small closet or a small little mom and pop shop, everyone gets treated the same. So as such, we have the license agreement that you opt into, and once you make that jump, I'll jump into the platform eventually and show you what happens next. But put a placeholder there for now. Again, the toll-free exchange, very simply put, it's a hosted Google Compute Cloud over SIP interconnection. The toll-free exchange takes care of all detail. We validate the rates. Destination of the call by looking up the dialed toll-free number in SOMOS, SCP. If the RESPORG has an established connection to the exchange and the rates match, then the call connects to the receiving responsible organization's network. The power of the toll-free exchange is that a single SIP interconnection to the toll-free exchange platform can immediately connect you to hundreds of participating RESPORGs. So some of the benefits, and I'll get more detail into these obviously as we get into this, but the exchange, benefits RESPORGs by improving toll-free call quality, enabling modern features, bringing the calling and called party closer together. It is a very, very good tool for fraud, and it's a simplification of billing where you're basically managing fewer vendors and fewer carrier invoices. The nice thing is it actually is it both reduces your cost when you're buying toll-free service, and it increases your revenue if you are originating toll-free calls and sending them out as toll-free termination to the rest of the world from your CLEC or your business or anything else where you're calling outward toll-free numbers. Just lastly here, and it's the first and only, it's a patented technology. It's the first and only RESPORG to RESPORG routing platform to use authoritative routing information, meaning that we're dipping the SOMOS database that is the agreed upon central repository of where a toll-free number exists at any given second. So it works from that same authoritative routing information to directly connect responsible organizations. No inter-exchange carrier, no tandem, no traditional public switch telephone network. This completely revolutionizes the way toll-free calls are made by using your existing responsible organization ID or one that you're about to create with the help of resporg.com. Obviously, it allows you to connect calls with other responsible organizations. So I'll get down here a little bit. Here's a couple of logos on here. We haven't updated this in a bit, but you can see some very forward-leading companies, some very big companies, some good volume guys are on here. And Will went into these pieces in his one of his slides, so I'll skip past that. But one thing I do want to show you before I move on to a little bit more detailed information is that within the site itself, there is an FAQ section. And just to give you an idea of how much information is in here, if you do have follow-up questions that we don't address on the call, you can see that there is a very robust FAQ section here that really contemplates quite a few different features within the platform, regulatory information, again, all the way down to taxable implications. So feel free to browse that section when you have questions, again, if we don't address them on the call. Now, generally speaking, I like to start any presentation about the exchange with this image. And this image took quite a while to develop, in the sense that it tries to contemplate a very, very complex environment. And I think that we've very well managed to get this to a single image that I can talk through. And I'll talk through this pretty specifically, but I find that this is a really good starting point. And I may come back to this image multiple times as I'm showing you features in the platform and clarify where in this diagram we're speaking to when we're on the platform. So in a very simplistic way, I want to start with asking that we just consider this top line right here, right? You see this top line? We're going to also start assuming that you're buying. You're a buyer of toll-free services that come inbound to you or your network or into your PBX, whatever you have happening, and that you're getting it to where it needs to be on the other side. Now, to buy that service, traditionally, if you're buying just a simple flat rate, and I'm going to start with a single carrier and a flat rate and get more complex from there. So let's say you are only buying your service from either Legacy Level 3 or CenturyLink. Obviously, they're really more CenturyLink now. They've made the transition. And let's say, for instance, you're paying a flat 006 to get those calls to your network. On the originating side, somebody out there, and we'll say it's a CLEC in this scenario. Again, you've got a single carrier buying a flat rate. An originating source is a CLEC, someone goes off hook with the CLEC. They will dip the Somos database, and let's pretend this little sun here is the Somos database. They'll dip that database. That database will instruct that local exchange carrier on what IXC carrier is supposed to take that call to the foreign end or the distant end. That instruction will send that down, technically a feature group D, or via the tandem into eventually a feature group D that'll go through the PSTN. And on the other end, that'll go to an IXC, potentially another reseller of that IXC at a carrier level, and eventually out to the responsible organization on the distant end, and then obviously to the end user. In that scenario, you're getting a 006, and these are just average market rates. These are just kind of a culmination. You know, your mileage may vary, if I may say. But let's just use for example's sake that this CLEC, when that call is coming from that CLEC, that this IXC will charge you 006. Again, if it's a flat rate, you're going to get charged the same all over. But going back the other way, that CLEC may get a compensation rate of 0015 in that, and that's fairly accurate, for the use of their network to originate your toll-free call. So in that scenario, you can see that there's a pretty big spread between that 006 and the 0015, which means basically the IXC is got some pretty sticky hands in that transaction. Now, granted, they're providing service, providing a role of allowing you to have a ubiquitous toll-free type service and bringing the world to your doorstep via a toll-free number. And that's great. And that's worked very well since the dawn of Bell. What we are showing in the toll-free exchange is an opportunity to take what has traditionally been a what I'll call a daisy chain of events to get you that ubiquity and bringing the world to your doorstep via a toll-free number. And we're giving you an opportunity to potentially, as a responsible organization, participate in the toll-free exchange. By doing so, we obviously at this point are encouraging that local exchange company, who's also happens to be a responsible organization. We'll put a placeholder on that for the moment because I do want to remain on the buying side of the equation. Let's say that CLEC is incented because they may be able to get a 0035 compensation instead of 0015 that they traditionally get from the public switch telephone network. They say, you know what, I'm going to try to see if there's a peer on the exchange first. So they route that call out to the toll-free exchange. The toll-free exchange takes its 0005 standard rate that everybody gets for participation of a peered call and adds that to the 0035 to get a net effective rate of 004. And again, we're just going to stay on this top line for right now to do the simplest single carrier, single flat rate. So the net effective rate to the buyer now is 004. So you can see there's a 33% benefit. Again, in this example, your mileage may vary, but this is not at all out of the realm of reason or experience. That obviously is it's a benefit cost here. And obviously the originating company also had a pretty significant benefit. So on this equation, both entities got a 002 benefit because they used the toll-free exchange. Now, if for whatever reason, this rate here, if you're buying at 0035, the toll-free exchange will actually go and look, because you input, and I'll show you that in a minute, how we see your rate. So we know that you are paying in that scenario. Again, if this is 0035 that you're paying, we'll say, oh, that's too much. 004 is more. We don't want him to pay more. We don't want that partner to pay more. So we do a profit protection 302 redirect back to the originating source, who then goes out back through the PSTN, because you'd prefer financially to get that call through the PSTN at a reduced 0035 rate in this scenario. But again, what I show here is a successful peer on the other end, and I show a successful financial match to create that call. Now, if the peer isn't on the other end, again, and I'm going to put the hat on for the originating side here for a second, if this CLEC goes on and tries the exchange and there isn't a partner Russ Borg at the other end, they simply get a 302 back again and go back to the PSTN to find that number the way they have through the central PSTN databases and SOMOS, the way they have again since the dawn of Bell. Now, since we've had a simple explanation, let's do something really quick here, and I'm going to touch on the platform, and then I'm going to come back to this image because I think it's important to, while we're still in that simple math world, let me kind of show you an example of the platform. And I'm going to use TeleX. Again, you can see we have grown quite a bit over the last year or so. I'm going to bring in TeleX account, and I bring TeleX in as an account, and I want to clarify this now. Toll-free exchange is a wholly owned subsidy of TeleX. Again, when we went to the FCC, they wanted us to be an independent, completely separate, federal ID, everything, to be a software siloed company, to not be regulated. And we obviously followed all that instruction to remain unregulated. So TeleX is a sister company that happens to be a partner on the platform, just like everybody else that uses it. They have no visibility beyond being a customer. They can't see information that you can't see, so it is completely siloed. So what you see is this is a cell rate, and we'll put right here, you'll see this 0055. That is the equivalent of maybe what this 0035 was in our earlier example. You'll see a ceiling rate or a buy rate of 006, and that does reflect what the person is buying on the other end. So if TeleX were on this side as a receiving responsible organization, that's their rate that they are basically paying, that they want people to come try beat. So within the platform, you have the ability to manage both sides of the relationships. So you can do both the selling and the buying from a central location. So let me go back to the image now. And now that you see where you see your responsible organization, you see your sell rate, you see your buy rate, I'm going to go back into the diagram now. And that was a simple single carrier flat rate. Now, some of you buy your toll-free via multiple carriers, and you create a complex routing record within SOMOS, meaning you take your various LATA OCN or your NPA and XX rates, and you basically create a least cost origination file of the best of all three of those for any given destination that originates a call. You take that file and then you basically work with either your RESTboard services partner, or you have templates yourself you create, or whoever and however you make that happen. You load that into Somos. So Somos, as many of you know, have limited amounts of data and information that they can receive. So generally speaking, a lot of different numbers get thrown around, but let's say there's 180,000 NPA and XX or LATA OCN combinations. Somos's limitation is that generally speaking, you can get about 30,000 lines of manipulation into your routing file. Some people have got more, some people get less. Some people have very specific geographic concentrations, so they don't have to worry about all 180,000, whatever. So one form or fashion, that costing data is optimized here, but is limited by what you can input here. So when you basically have a multi-carrier scenario, you can see that this responsible organization said, hey, you know what? When it's going to be a CLEC on the other end, I want it to be CenturyLink to carry that call. If it's going to be a mobile network operator or an over-the-top guy, I actually would prefer Verizon to take that call because they're more competitive. And if it's going to be an independent ILEC, some of the legacy rural phone companies that service areas that are a little distant, more network cost, all the reasons those costs remain very high. Maybe AT&T is the best in the game at that, so they have AT&T put in for their ILEC type traffic. So again, same scenario. If this guy goes off hook, has a caller go off hook, he's going to basically send that down the path to get to the distant RESTboard through the PSTN. In this case, it's Verizon that'll take that call. And again, the flow of money goes back the other way and gets a little sticky on the way through, and only maybe 0005 makes its way back out the other end. Well, again, the exchange says, hey, well, Mr. Over the top or a mobile network operator, go ahead and put in here what you think you may be able to get. And they put in 01015, and here it comes out the other end. We had our trip 5 again into there, 002, a net cost reduction of, again, about 33% over the 003 that they're paying today. Same thing happens on the bottom line. So it doesn't get any more complex than that. So the single line, I buy a flat rate. I only have one carrier. Great. You understand what happens here, here, and here. Multi-carrier, you've got different variety of kicks, a variety of NPA and XX or LATA OCN instructions at Somos. Again, no problem. We handle that complexity of the variety on both ends of the platform. Now, that being said, let's get back into the platform. And let me show you a couple things within the platform that that I think are worth taking a peek at. Obviously, we've gone into, at this point, let me back up here for a second. At this point, we assume that you've gone into register, you've accepted the license agreement, and put in your basic contact information. That will land you on a page at that point like this. This is where you land once you've registered your name. When you're ready to add your responsible organization ID, you pop in, you put your ID in here, the name of the company, and you can get, you can do, I won't say creative, but you can do specific naming in this, where what you could do is you basically take and, for instance, maybe this is a wireline. Like you can see over here, Teleax, for instance, separates out their wireless and their wireline with two different RESTboard IDs. So you can add as many RESTboard IDs as you like. And if you want to separate traffic out that way, great. We encourage that. The platform allows you to do that. So anyway, you put a name in if you want to put a different naming convention, or you've got acquisitions or you've got multiple companies, etc. You put in your IP addresses you're going to send from into the platform. Again, that's assuming that we're over on this side of the network right now, where you're sending from IPs. And then you're going to put your, I'm going to receive from IPs. Again, that's receiving on the right-hand side that we showed in our graphic. And then you're going to put your default cell rate, or really your cell rate. You're going to put in your ceiling rate here. And this assumes the simplest I buy a flat rate scenario. This may be your highest default rate if you have multiple carriers. This might be, I pay at least this on average. I don't want to get anything more than that. I don't want to pay more than that. Let that be my nothing higher than this. At that point, you have an opportunity here to say, okay, great. Listen, if I'm sending traffic to the exchange, I don't really have a lot of other options for toll-free termination or calls leaving my network. Why don't you just take all the traffic toll-free exchange? So if there's not a peer on the other end, you go ahead and you be the one to go ahead and send it back into the PSTN, because I'm going to send all my calls here. You know what? If there's not a peer, just go in this route, and then the exchange does in fact compensate back to that local exchange carrier, much like their existing toll-free term provider does. And that is a dynamic rate. That is a rate element that can be discussed and varies between originating partners because it's not a peered call. And therefore the FCC says that's not a problem. If it's not a peered call, you can in fact have a variable rate on that side. So we can discuss that. So if you decide to accept all traffic, great. If you don't tick that box, you come down to this box and you say, if you are going to send that call back to me, you know what? Yeah, I wouldn't mind receiving the kick in that. We've already dipped the call. We see what the kick is. We get that back with the Somos database dip. And if there's not a peer, we'll 302 that call if you haven't had us selected to take care of that. And then we will in fact give you a 302, and in that message, you will actually get the kick of record to where you don't need to redip it if you don't want. Some people like that, some people don't. So you have a variable option to do that if you wish. And so again, we give you that for free. There is no cost for that. That's just, we've already got the info here, have at it. So again, you create your Rustborg ID at that point. You have basically now prompted the platform to send you, or more specifically, the contact of record at Somos related to that responsible organization ID will get a secondary security email. We're all familiar with these days. You get the email, it's got a link. All you got to do is hit the link and you're active. And so basically what happens is once you hit submit, you will be able to see the information you just input. You'll see pending in this confirmation status. And once you hit that email link, this will go active. And basically that's just to make it so someone can't go on there on behalf of yourself and hit that link. If you are a customer of Rustborg.com, formerly ATL, that may be a scenario where you've got a sub ID of ATLs, and they will receive that email and message. So it's usually a good idea to let ATL know, or Rustborg.com know, that you're going to be participating and that they may want to expect an email, because you do want them to confirm that for you so you can be active on the platform. Once you're active, you've got a successful Rustborg ID. Anytime you want to add more, this is where you go. You add another one, and you can, again, list those as long as you want. Just one other thing while I'm talking in here, a reminder to myself, you can list as many IP addresses in here as you like. If you've got 20 nodes that actually onboard calls independently and not in the central network database, then yes, you can add all those IPs into this field. Likewise, if you've got multiple receiving points, same thing. There you go. So that being said, you now have a responsible organization in here. These action buttons will allow you to go in and, again, manipulate this information if you want. You can add more into, you subtract more if you have network changes, grooms, etc. You can also manipulate in here your originating or your cell rate to make that a different rate. If you find that maybe it's just not working, you're getting a lot of financial rejects, maybe you feel like you're charging a little too much, you go in there and change that. Similarly on the terminating side, although the difference on the terminating side is you can actually create named trunk groups to point to different endpoints. And we will allow you to kind of do a cascade of trunk groups, again, to a multi-location termination scenario, terminating into you as the receiver of the toll-free call. Here, if you ever have question, here's your IPs. These are unique to every single originating entity. We provide those. This is common to everyone that's receiving from the exchange. So these stay constant for everybody. Again, we use unique IPs on the originating side to allow us to separate out traffic, allow for multi-point origination points, just to keep things cleaner and a little bit more siloed on that side. These are for individual rates, and I'll go back into that in a minute. One of the things about the exchange is you automatically get a one-to-many, meaning that when you're on the exchange, you get to absolutely have access to everybody that's originating on the network. Or conversely, if you're on this side, one connection gets you all the responsible organizations that are participating in the exchange. And you saw those via the logo and the landing page I showed you previously, so I don't need to go back into those. So one of the things that the exchange does, it does a simple I buy a flat rate. It does a here's my LATA OCNs or my MPA and XX rates to get a more specific peering match to the one-to-many, or you can actually do direct peering one-to-one within the platform itself. So the decision making in the platform will say, hey, financially, first it'll say, is there a matching Rustborg on the other end, a participant? The answer is yes, great, that's affirmative. Then it goes through a financial decision tree of, is there a direct peer? If so, that's what gets honored immediately, because that's been a directly negotiated rate between two responsible organizations, and I'll show you where we do that in a minute. The second tier of financial decision making is this a match at a LATA, OCN, or MPA and XX level, matching the originating seller with the person receiving that call on the other end with their buy rate. And if that's affirmative, great. If there's no LATA OCN rates and someone just buys at a flat rate, then great. The decision is, what's the flat rate? Is it better than the flat rate? Great, let it through. If it's not, nope, push it back. So again, you have three opportunities: a flat rate, LATA OCN / MPNXX, or direct peered relationships within that environment decision tree. All right, so you've seen the actions on how to edit an actual Rustborg. So I've showed you all that. And again, this is where you would go in for those direct peer scenarios. Let's say, again, you're buying and you realize in some of the reporting that you're only getting about half the calls. And again, I'll show you in the reporting how that works. You're only getting about half the calls into your network, or that are trying to peer. Only about half of them are making it from one originating responsible organization. You probably know at that point there's probably a financial mismatch somewhere, right? So at that point you say, okay, let me select the originating Rustborg. There's a couple of them on there to choose from. And you say, okay, I want to do a direct relationship with this particular responsible organization. What I will say is, look, for you, Mr. Rustborg, I'll push that ceiling rate up for you, because I know you're a rural ILEC, and I understand why my 006 isn't working between the two of us. So let me put that up to a penny, because I know your tariffs and your cost structure. Really, I'm paying a little bit more on that penny and a half in some scenarios. Again, just supposition. But when you put it on here, he's more than happy to see this. So again, you have the ability to individually peer that relationship to override the MPNXX or LATA OCN level pricing. So, and again, add that plus sign, and that's gone out. You can go through your entire list of reporting and select maybe your top 20 this month and say, you know what, I'm going to try to fine tune this, so you can optimize the value of the exchange. All right, now, one other thing to point out here is that if any time you feel like the exchange isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing, or you can't exclude it from an issue, you can simply hit that trash can, and it's like pulling up the e-brake. You literally can stop participation in the exchange at that moment. And you can do it at the responsible organization level. Conversely, that'll turn into a refresh button, refresh arrow. You hit that button again, and just as quickly as you stopped, you're lit back up again and everything's green lighted. Now, when you do hit that trash can and you loop it up, basically what's happening is that call gets to here and it gets that 302 right back. Call gets to here, 302 right back. No delay, no nothing, just a minimal amount of bounce back to you, or to the originating source more specifically. Now, you may have been the one to turn off the Rustborg ID, saying, I don't want it to come to me that way right now. I'm having issues over here. No. So it will literally just take it out to the PSTN. So any given time a call financially or technically is not viable, it is going to go back to the originating source. In other words, the toll-free exchange is an opportunity overlay that complements your existing toll-free termination or your toll-free buying environment. Again, it's an overlay of opportunity for either cost savings or for cost benefit or for revenue benefit to its participants. And if that doesn't work, we will instruct all the way around to make sure it stays in that PSTN environment that you've already got plumbed in. Again, let me go back to here briefly. Let me just show you quickly. This is where you would load your rates. Again, we've got a sample of the MPNXX file, a sample LATOCN file. You can choose either one, whichever you're more comfortable with. All right, so now that I've kind of shown you how to manipulate an actual responsible organization number, I will go in and show you some of the menu features. Again, this is where you land anytime you log in. One other thing just to mention real brief before I go on that, you see this pseudo JIP field. This is really just an NPA NXX looking field that allows for a pseudo JIP that allows us to give you a, again, 9 series number. So it's not going to conflict with 180,000 that are in production. But this 9 series number identifies the responsible organization. So in the call stream and in the CDR, you have the ability to call up a MPNXX type field to get through your reconciliation processes, your real-time costing, any kind of swiveling of CDR you do out to the rest of the world, potentially as a reseller. You have that ability through that pseudo JIP. Now, again, having gone through and shown you how to manipulate individual Rustborg IDs, I'm now going to show you where you basically go in. Any other functionality within the platform all happens from this drop-down menu here. This drop-down menu here, and I'm not going to go up on all these. Again, this is this takes you back into manipulating an individual Rustborg, so you can go there from this area as well. Let's go into, and I'm going to go somewhat out of order here, not completely, but I will. I'm going to start with the reporting tab because that's where a lot of people end up having questions. So I am going to run a basic start date. Let's just say yesterday to today. What's happened? And this is traffic going to the toll-free exchange from this entity. And you can see in here, you get this is my, if you're a customer of Rustborg, this is my ID. This is the entity I'm sending to. And remember, I talked about different names that people have. Again, for instance, InContact actually uses their Rustborg IDs within their own name so that when they see stuff, it actually is already siloed. So we allow, again, the term entity is the person who's the master account, if you will, the administrator. Then the term name is maybe a subset ID that you organized within the way you wanted to organize. That's a free field. And then you actually get the hard termination ID or responsible organization that, again, we all agree is the common language used in Somos to identify an entity of record. Here you see attempts, you see minutes, you see ALOC and ASR. Again, CPS may or may not be important to you. You do see that sell rate. You do see what the sell rate is that maybe, again, this is the originating side. So that entity, again, partner company, Teleax in this scenario, this is a direct peer deal. This is a direct peer deal, direct peer. This is just a postalized one-to-many, right? So you can see where that way in this field, you can see what's happening. You can see the amount, and then you see the toll-free exchange's participation in that for creating the peer value relationship. One thing I do want to point out on here is ASR. You can see that the ASR in this connection is 94%, 95%. That's pretty much a retail grade connectivity assumption with ASR. 13, not so much. So that tells me right away, I've got a rate issue with this entity. I want to go back in and I want to do a direct peer deal with them. I need to get a little further down the road and understanding where we're not matching, because I'd like all 38 of those attempts. I would like all of them. I don't want just some of them. So in any case, I thought that was worth showing you. Conversely, you can do the same thing on the other side. Same exact logic. And for time's sake, I'm gonna kind of go right through that. Live report, kind of cool. Shows you what's happening any given moment. Current calls, these are calls that are up right now. So you can audit this back against your network and make sure you're seeing the same thing. And this is just for this ID. Call records, of course, you can do date range. You can do, again, I showed you, hey, in contact and telex, only 16 or in the teens percentage. Let me call up all the call records between the two of us so I can do a little deeper dive on what's happening. Or go ahead to the 10-digit level. See what's happening at 10-digit level, whether it be the toll-free number being called or the ANI or point of origin that is originating the call. Go ahead and submit those. You'll get an export button here where you can take that out via CSV, or you can take that out via a PDF. Obviously, CSV allows you to get that in, manipulate it how you'd like, and you can move through your data accordingly. So that's the reporting functionality. Again, it's just these sub-navigations running horizontally. All I did is go into reports. That brought us here, and then I navigated this way. Again, within these areas, you can see some sub-reports that get you some information that's a little bit more detailed and siloed, so that you don't necessarily have to export that and do your pivot tables to get some of that. And we can go into those a little further if we have opportunities on a one-on-one basis for your particular organization's needs. But for the general audience, let's keep moving. So after the reporting area, I am going to move into the trouble ticket area, which I will move into, or the customer support, not trouble ticket, because it handles a lot more than what I'll call just a ticket. So generally speaking, in the ticket environment, much like any other, you go in and you've got your inventory of open, resolved, closed, of course, other. You're going to add a new ticket, let's say, and you put in your own subject, you put in a description of what you think's happening, or describe what your question may be, because down here, we will allow you to classify that request. And so let's say, for instance, it's a question. I don't know how to find this information. Oh, I haven't been in a while. I actually have a new ID I want to add. Can someone contact me to help me walk through that? So that'd be a question. A problem is obviously a technical issue, fraud, and this is one that question that's already come in. So I am going to address it somewhat here, and then I can follow up with additional information with your question after. So thank you for the early question. Appreciate that. But in the fraud scenario, if you indicate that it's fraud, you may want to come into the platform here and immediately look for call records and say, hey, you know what? I know it's all coming to one toll-free number. So I'm going to put that in the field and give myself a date range. And I'm going to search, and that's going to give me the ability to pull up a call record that has all the data implied in the headers here. And I'm going to attach that record that's from the system into the ticket itself. So within the platform, you can literally call up and attach the CDR from the platform into the actual trouble ticket. Of course, you can add your own research or data into that trouble ticket as well, right? So let's say, for instance, you've got something that's not fraud, and I'll stay on fraud, but let's say it's, you're seeing a series of things happen between yourself and a different responsible organization, and you've got your research that you want to drop into the ticket as well. So you add that as an attachment outside. Of course, fraud, probably not going to be a low priority. You're probably going to step that up a bit. So you can make your urgency. Obviously, a simple question, certainly low. We don't have to drop everything we're doing to address. Sorry, I think I may have clipped just a minute there. So recognizing that, I stopped. So apologize for that delay. Once you do that and you put that ticket in, that ticket goes to a small group of folks internally who quickly take a look at that ticket, quickly understand who the person was who launched that fraud suspected information. We take a look and said, yep, smells, looks, and sounds like fraud to me. We address the originating responsible organization and tie the two of you together to be able to work head to head via your, let me wait for it, via your indicated fraud notification entity. And this may be your legal team, this may be a specific fraud entity. So we will tie those two entities together via an email communication to allow you to work head to head to resolve or address that fraud. Now, what generally happens is the guy on this end probably doesn't know that there's fraud on the network, because the guys that are originating the calls over here are, as we all know, are pretty creative with how they move that stuff around. And in a traditional call flow, you may take that fraud request and go to your IXE carrier, could have been either one of these guys. You open up a trouble ticket and you hope today that it's as important to them as it is to you. They swivel around and hope that it's as important to them as it is to them, as it is to you, as you can see on down the line. By the time this guy gets back and you get that response back on the suspected fraud, the fraud guy's not using this network anymore. He's already moved down to this one, or maybe he's already moved down to this one. Again, the daisy chain of connectivity between entities to resolve that fraud ticket really allows a head start for whoever's doing the fraud to disappear before you can even catch them. The exchange, on the other hand, allows you to create that fraud ticket and data while it's happening. They can query that same CDR data because it's the same CDR data from their side. They can confirm what they're seeing and start chasing backwards to get that stuff off their network. And you can work head to head to resolve the fact that that's happened. And I think that in a nutshell is really one of the really, really nice things about the direct peering is it's originating source and it's terminating source. And you get to work in a timely fashion, whether it be fraud or conversely, let's go back to the ticket area. And let's say, again, it's not fraud. Let's say it's a problem. It's just DTMF issue or whatever else. Again, likewise, if it's a DTMF issue or something of the like, it's very, very, very rarely something that's involving the platform. It's usually on the originating end, or there's something happening where on the originating end or on this end, or it's the end user. But generally speaking, the platform will take a look at that knock ticket, we'll call it, or a trouble ticket, and we'll say, yep, looks normal coming in. Yep, looks normal going out. Likewise, we will bring you in knock to knock, head to head, and we'll let you start working directly with the originating source to see if you can work out what is happening technically that's causing any issues. And again, back to the daisy chain, if you didn't do that, if it was a regular PSTN call, again, you're swiveling around, is this guy giving the same message to this guy that you gave to him, vice versa, and by the time that comes back, can you do another one? We don't keep call records after a day. We all know how that goes. So again, the technical advantage of the head-to-head or the peer-to-peer allows you for real quick resolution of any type of technical fraud or any issues that involve a one-to-one relationship. Tags, this may be something along the lines of what your trouble ticket system numbers are, or we'll combine the other trouble ticket systems if it's a head-to-head scenario. So everyone's got their own systems, never mind using ours. So we have an opportunity here to at least create some commonality in the note field. Once you have submitted that ticket, the inventory and everything will exist here. It's a common point where people can actually open and update notes in here, and it'll stay in here until such time as it closed. And then obviously it resolves, closed, it'll move into the appropriate categories. The next thing I want to show you briefly, and we're getting towards the end here, so I appreciate your patience, everyone hanging on. But quickly, I want to show you a 10-digit routing. While everything is happening at the responsible organization level, we do allow for 10-digit manipulation, right? So if you have a number, 8XX, blah, 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 whatever toll-free number you want to put in there, you can literally exclude or reject that toll-free number from participation on the exchange. If an originating call goes off hook, comes into the exchange, we dip that toll-free number. Well, we're not even dipping it. It's been blocked by you at a 10-digit level. We're not even dipping that. That's going back the other way. It's just going to get rejected. So that'll go back to the PSTN, and that number will come up PSTN just like you wanted it to. So you can do that at an individual level, and obviously you can just as easily reactivate that. And before I said you can create different naming on your terminating trunk groups or your trunk groups coming inbound to your network. So you can indicate which number you want that to point to. You can also do that at a batch level. Let's say, for instance, you have a provisioning process where you sell 1,000 numbers a day, 500 of those are ports. You're not ready to hot cut that customer. You upload a 10-digit reject of all customers sold that day. Maybe 2 weeks later, you come back and you upload that same exact file because you know you've cut over all numbers for that given day and that they're ready to traffic. You upload that file, indicate back to service, and that number is green lighted back into service and actively receiving calls on the toll-free exchange. So with that being said, that is the basic functionality. I want to show you invoices briefly. Let me go back into this area. So you see your invoices coming in from this environment. I'll show you a couple invoice examples. So here's an example of a trafficking 2 directions, right? Terminating activity is activity that is going into the exchange, meaning that there's an expectation of getting paid. Again, that's the traffic going this way. This is an auditing or an accounting of minutes times that rate, if you will, if that was this person's rate. And you would see that aggregation of revenue here. Here's what they bought, though. They bought $18,000 worth of revenue that month. That's what they would pay for buying toll-free service from the exchange. So in our single carrier scenario, that's minutes times 004 to get to that amount. You also see what the exchange pulled in that to create the peer, to create the traffic copying, and to be the settlement engine. You see that amount, and then you get a net total. And if the number at the end of the month is bigger for what should be paid to you, then you will get a check. If the number is smaller or the other way, and you have more of a balance because you bought more, then you owe. And so it's as easy as that. You either have a red number or a black number, and we will do the settlement of all your dynamic partnerships and peering to give you that. And just to give you more detail, within the summary, yep, you see it. It's there. Attempts by association or by Rustborg ID, minutes, sell rate, the exchange, activity amount. So some of that detail is in there. And again, I'm kind of flying through some of this, but again, we can get into more detail on that as we go through. But again, I would encourage those who have deeper dive questions or are very interested in learning more. Let's start with the FAQ. Of course, I'll answer any questions right now, but I would encourage there's some really good detail in here. We spent a lot of time really contemplating questions. So if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer at this time. Again, it's the simple registration process here. And so as we go through this, let me dive into my chat screen. And let's see what we've got. Looks like not many questions. I like it. What that means to me is that we were fairly thorough with how we presented the information. And at this point, I am going to hand this back over to Will and John. And Will, you should be receiving the request for screen grab. So please have at it.
I've got it. Can everybody see my screen? And I'm going to make this really brief, everyone, just because I know we're at the top of the hour now and time is of the essence. So as you can see, there's a lot of information here. The toll-free exchange is some really good sauce that allows you to do some great things with your toll-free numbers. So if you want to get involved with the toll-free exchange, you can contact ATL or Rustborg.com. If you're not a Rustborg already, we can get you set up. or your other RESTborg providers. Of course, we want you to use us. If you are already a customer with ATL, you can click on the link I just put in the chat box below. It'll take you to a jot form that Christy developed. This will allow you to put the information in for our RESTborg department to contact you. So again, we're here to help make this easy and to get you guys using the exchange so you can get save money on your toll-free Ridge and term. So are there any questions at this point?
I do, yeah, here we go.
It looks like we have one, Will. Does the toll-free exchange sit in the middle of the RTP stream as well as the SIP?
Yes, so we handle all signaling and all media. That is correct. We handle all transcoding in that middle. So we do. One other thing to mention, as I say that, I remind myself that if the originating entity is G722 and the receiving entity is G722, you are in effect having an HD call, which you can't do on the PSTN because of all the codecs changes and maybe TDM in there. With the exchange, because there's an originating party and a terminating party, you literally are doing head-to-head HD if you both are signaling as such. But we are in the RTP stream, to answer your question in the affirmative.
Are there any other questions for me, Sean, or Christy, or John?
No, it doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your time today. Thank you, Sean and Christy, for joining us. We value our partnership with the Toll-Free Exchange.
Very much.
We value our customers that have attended this call and prospective customers as well. As I said, if you have questions, please get in touch with us directly, 800-938-9000. You can email me, wgensler@atlc.com, or Sean at sean.moore@tollfree.exchange. And again, thank you very much for participating, and the link to the jot form is in the chat notes. It's a very, very simple form if you're wanting to engage via your RESTborg with ATL. So soon to be restborg.com. We're going to be throughout the rest of this year kind of messaging this ATL transition to restborg.com. And if you guys have questions about that rebrand, again, let John or I know. But we appreciate your time and appreciate everyone here as customers today.